Hello, hello, ReactConf. This is wild. I've been out there. It's my first time up here, and it's just the wildest journey because like React, like it changed my life. I think it changed a lot of people's lives, and it's just like it's such a meaningful project to me, and it's such an honor to be able to talk to you today about some new features coming to React. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So, you know, we heard that the heart of React is the community. And, you know, I had a different thing in mind when I planned this talk, but I can't really argue with that. So we'll talk about what the lungs of React might be, like breathing life into the project from an early age. And like, you know, back in 2013 when it was first announced, and we all saw it and had various opinions on it, but the folks who were most drawn to it, I think I would argue that the lungs of React is the core component model, and what's at the core of that, if nothing but composition and the declarative API. And I think that was true from the start. And you know, over the years, React has grown up a lot. It's changed a lot. Every year we get up here and we talk about new features, and you know, like all of the just kind of paradigm shifts over the years. And you know, a lot of people have feelings about that, right? Particularly recently, you hear a lot of chat in their community and how much React has changed and how hard it can be and all of these things. But you know, I just want to like back up for a moment and talk about this, like the lungs, like the thing that sort of has maintained that through line throughout the years and all the change. And, you know, in 2018, this guy got on stage, a good friend of mine named Ryan, and he talked about this new paradigm called hooks, and kind of showed us, walked us through like a refactoring from class components to hooks, and again, felt different, but at the end of the day, what were hooks if not a way to make logic more declarative and more composable? And then later on that year, it was a big year for React, we got an introduction from Dan to suspense. And what was suspense? Suspense was a way to make asynchronous stuff more composable and more declarative. This has been a consistent theme throughout the project, and of course in 2022 nobody got on stage because there was a little thing going on and we had to take a few years off. But you know what happened? We got our first implementations of React Server components, and this was like the big thing that everyone talked about and everyone was sort of like scared of and freaked out, and we still hear a little bit about that. But what did server components give us if not a way to cross the network? And this is just the wildest thing to me still. I'm like, every time I look into it, I just get so just hyped, because crossing the network through components and serializing functions is like what are we even doing here? But it made crossing that network barrier more composable and more declarative. And that is just something that continues through to this day. And so I want to talk to you about some APIs that make other hard things more composable, more declarative, and I'm excited about React just sort of continuing that path forward with these things. So we'll go into a demo, and I'm going to do something that is incredibly ill-advised for my first ReactConf talk, and I'm going to live code some stuff for you. And I'm realizing that I need some technical support here. Okay. There is a non-responsive mouse situation, so I can't get to my demo. Sorry about that, but hey, we're doing it live.
I'm gonna have to take it out of.
There we go. Awesome. Thanks so much. Cool. So we're gonna do some live coding, and here we've got. I haven't done anything yet. You don't have to clap yet. But here we've got a little app that is going to play us some music videos, and we'll just take a little quick tour of the app itself. We've got a little sidebar. You can open and close the sidebar, and we've got a little search here. I can filter through some of the videos. I can hide that. I can click into a video. I can check out albums. So that's kind of like the core of the app. It's just a little video player. And we're going to talk about some features that we might want to add and some improvements we might want to make. So the first thing we're going to jump into is we got some feedback from a user, and they said, I really like the search feature, but one of the things that could be better is if I go ahead and search for an album, and I'm sort of in this search state, and now I want to go and actually look for a video for a minute. I'm going to close this up and look through the videos. I'm going to open this back up, and I would expect to see that my search is still sort of there, but it's not, right? It gets wiped away. And so how might we fix that? So traditionally in React, so we think about what we're actually looking at here. We've got an input field, and we want to maintain its state despite the fact that we are not actually rendering it. So this is our sidebar here, and we can see that we've got a toggle, and we're only showing the children. In this case, the children is our library if show sidebar is toggled on. And because we're conditionally rendering this thing, it unmounts and remounts, which resets all of the state in the component. And so how would we do this in React? We would, of course, lift state to the nearest parent, right? And then we would pass it down. And the nearest parent in this case is our sidebar. But here's the thing. I'm looking at this code. I'm seeing that sidebar doesn't actually know anything about the library to be rendering anything, right? It is just a composable sidebar component, and it could have anything it wants in there. We don't really want to change that. So how do we manage state here and try and pass it? Well, we could have context, but that's kind of weird because, again, we could have multiple things in here, and what if there was another stateful component and we had the same issue, and then we're lifting that up, and now we've created this weird coupling between the state of random children and our sidebar, and that's not ideal. So we don't want to lift state up. So this is where activity comes in, and Amofe taught us a little bit about the API here, and so we're going to bring in the activity component, and we're going to just pull this guy up here, and we're no longer going to conditionally render this. We're going to switch the mode here. Let's first import this, and we're going to say when show sidebar is true, we're going to show it, and otherwise we're going to hide it, right? And so now we take a look at this guy, do a quick refresh, and see that if we search for something, close it up, open it back, boom, we still have our state here. And what's really interesting about this is not actually all React state. This is actually an uncontrolled input component. So this is just the DOM managing this state. And what's happening is you type in here, and there's this debounce function call that triggers an onSubmit function in the form that it's nested in. So you don't even have to control the state, really. So we get to maintain our React state, which is the filtered list of videos or albums, and then we also get to manage or maintain our DOM state, which you can also see is true if we do something like scroll, right? If I scroll down here, and now I'm at the bottom, and I close this up and then reopen it, we see we've also maintained our scroll position, which is pretty cool. We didn't have that before. And so we've maintained all of our DOM state, all of our React state, and we didn't have to do any weird piping through of state to we didn't create any coupling, right? The library didn't have to change any of its implementation details. I think that's really, really cool. And you look at this code and you're like, oh, well, what's the big deal? We're just conditionally showing or hiding a thing. And to me, this is the big deal. But there is a little bit more we can do with activity, right? So if we click into one of these videos, I'm going to close this up for a moment. And one thing that you might have to deal with is we have this thumbnail. And if I click on the thumbnail, let's go ahead and take a look at our network tab real quick. If I click on the thumbnail, what's going to happen is we are going to, let's go ahead and let's do that again so we can filter and see. So when I click, so right now we have no media request. And if I click on this guy, we're going to request the video, right? And it's pretty fast because I'm not, this is all just local. Let's go ahead and slow it down a little bit and try that again. Actually, let's not slow it down just yet because it's going to take forever to actually bundle. So, yeah, let's go ahead and say slow 4G. And now if I click this guy, we're going to see a loader, right? And that's fine, but that could happen. That is what it is. We deal with it. We've got a loading indicator. But I don't love that. So why don't we go into the video here, and we have this conditional rendering of the actual video element. So let's go ahead and change this as well, and pop this video into our activity component, And instead of this, we will just go, we'll still conditionally render the thumbnail here. We don't need to change anything about that. Cool. And then we want to import that. And then what's going on here? Whoops. That's should be that. Boom. All right. And so now we want to say should render player, then will be visible, otherwise will be hidden. Missed live coding. It's fun. So let's go ahead and stop throttling here. Let's save this. We'll get a reload. And again, we've got our thumbnail. But check this out. Before I even clicked anything, the video request has already been made. And so it's loading in the background. This is a really cool feature of Activity is because it's just rendering things under the hood and sticking them right in the DOM. The video has a preload prop on it, and we can go ahead and start loading that video in the background so that when we slow down our network here and click on it, we get a much faster response. And we didn't see that loading screen, which I think is pretty cool. And this is traditionally the point in the live code where people start clapping. So I just want to mildly prompt you to, you can clap for React, but clap for me because I'm still kind of nervous. So makes me feel good about myself. Cool, so that was Activity. Let's jump into some other features we can add into our app. Let's turn this off and go back to, let's go back, actually, let's just take a, we'll stick with this view for now, okay? And so, something we want to do here is we have this like theater mode feature where if I click into it, as you see, it sort of expands. I call this theater mode because that's what I think YouTube calls it, and I just copied them. So we are going to, this is, just kind of goes instantly, but we might want like a smoother animation of this thing. So, one thing we might do, we heard a little bit about view transitions, and they're really cool. And we know, of course, implementing them in, implementing them from scratch with just plain old vanilla JS is going to be a bit of an annoyance. So first of all, if I go into my server component and I need to, wire up this client behavior, and I'm probably going to pull in a use effect here because this is where the video is being rendered, right? So here's our player. And if we want to transition it, we need to pass a ref and go in here and set this up. So we would maybe have like, use ref. And immediately, if you've used server components, this is going to be a problem because you can't call hooks in a server component. Makes no sense. And an effect doesn't run on the server. Makes no sense. So that's not going to work. We can't actually start using all of the DOM APIs to wire up our view transition here. So, we might go into the video player and start wiring it up or setting it up here because this is a client component. But again, this could be anywhere in our app, and we might only want to animate it here in the route where we know that we've got this kind of like theater mode thing, right? And so yeah, so like, what do? Well, we all saw the API. We bring in a view transition, right? And I'm going to pull this guy up there, and I'm going to just save this guy and reload, and we're going to click it, and oh wait, nothing happened. Well, why did nothing happen? Well, nothing happened because view transitions, if we think of the API for view transitions in the browser, we have something like document.start view transition, right? And then this is where we would actually wire up our logic. We would say, like we want to trigger the start view transition, and when we do that, we want to like update some state in React so that we start rendering things. We'll just say update state for now, and we're going to pass in updated state. But here's the thing. Start view transitions is an asynchronous function. It waits for the next frame to do anything. Also, updating state in React is an asynchronous function. So we all know how fun asynchronous edge cases can be, so we need to bring in flush sync to make sure that this update actually completes before we start animating anything, right? So this is kind of a pain. And also, like, what am I actually changing? Well, I have to like add like an animation class to the actual DOM node so that my CSS actually works, and I have to pass it into this player component. But I go in here and like there's other DOM elements, and so I have to awkwardly forward a ref, and it's just kind of like gross. And then we heard all about the weird edge cases that you have to deal with when you do that. So we're not going to do any of that. But what if I told you that triggering a view transition anywhere in your tree was as simple as starting a transition in React? No longer need to flush anything. And this is pretty cool because view transitions just work automatically with any update that is triggered within a transition. Underneath, anything that updates a component, if that update is started in transition, everything underneath that view transition should work, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my video player here, and we're going to see we've got a few. Let's go ahead on enter. I need to actually find this. I thought I had this queued up, but there we are. All right, so we've got these two state set functions that update some stuff for us, and this is where we want to trigger the transition. So I'm going to call start transition, and this can work too if you get start transition from use transition and you need to use that pending state. And if you don't need to use the pending state and you just want to import it from React directly, you can totally do that too. And it will work either way because in either event we just trigger a transition. And so we want to do that when we enter the playing or the theater mode. Boom. That's it. That's it, right? Like that's all the code. And what I love about this is that we didn't have to reach into the guts and like pipe through refs or do any like weird DOM manipulation. And also like React takes care of a lot of things that we would normally have to think about, like loading assets. Like what if the video wasn't loaded yet? And when it came in, we've got this like weird loading state. And yeah, React's gonna actually wait a couple seconds to make, or a couple milliseconds, hopefully not a couple seconds, to load async things in the background, like images, fonts, so you don't get weird flickers or inconsistencies between the entering and exiting state, and it just kind of works. And that is so cool to me. And we can do the same thing. No, I don't want to print. That's silly. We can do the same thing here when we exit theater mode. And all we have to do is start a transition. Amazing. I love that. I love that so much. Cool. I've got 2 minutes to blow through some other things here, so I'm going to make this really, really quick. But, another cool thing about this, let's go back into our video component here. Actually, let's take a look at our metadata. So like right now, the metadata may or may not actually, maybe we want to transition here too. Maybe we want to like shift this up. And so how might we do that? So let's take a look at our video meta component. We might want to do something similar. But maybe we've got like 2 different React trees here, kind of both being potentially rendered. And so these are going to have different DOM elements within. So like how can you animate 2 completely different React trees and have them like seamlessly connected? Let's check that out. So we're going to go and add a view transition here. We're going to pop this guy up, and we've got one there. And of course, this is already going to be updated in a transition because these things move and whatnot with or without, or as soon as we update this theater mode thing. And so, if we slow this thing down a little bit, let's go into the animations panel. Whoops. And let's set this guy on super slow. And so let's check this out and see, why didn't you actually go down? We get a weird Chrome bug. This is obscuring my, oh, come on. Come on. Come on now. There we go. All right, now we can slow down. It's hard to zoom in that far and actually get anything to work. So we can see this thing kind of like jumps down a little bit, and that's not exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and say, let's see, our extended metadata is when we are, I think it's when we are in theater mode, right? Or no, that's when we're not in theater mode. So like, that's this little guy up here, and this is just kind of jumpy here, and we don't like that. So what I'm gonna do here is we've got these cool little props called enter and exit, where you can actually control the class name, the CSS class name that gets attached at different phases of the animation. And so we might want to do a slide up or a slide down, right? And then in our CSS somewhere, we're going to have some class selectors that are going to handle this kind of animation for us. And we're going to save that, and I'm going to go into theater mode, and it's not going to work. Maybe I didn't actually write the CSS correctly, or I'm holding something wrong. But hey, this is live coding, right? This is what you get when you decide to live demo at ReactConf, of all places. So my CSS isn't actually functioning as I would have intended. But what we're going to do here is we want to share a transition between the metadata that lives up here in the tree and the metadata that lives down here, so that we have a little bit more of a seamless flow, since these two pieces of text are sort of related. And one cool thing that you can do with the view transition component is that you can share a name here. And we could do something like name meta. I had another really cool demo for this particular feature that we're not going to have time for, unfortunately. But you know, we got to let other people talk. There's a lot of stuff to cover today. It's 19.2 is a big release. I'm pretty excited about it. This is probably, yeah, that's not going to work either. That's cool. And I think it's because my CSS is busted, which is my fault. I should be a better CSS developer. But I'm really excited about these features. And as you heard, View Transitions is now available in Canary. Activity is now available in the stable release of 19.2. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with them. I really highly encourage you to go check them out. And yeah, join me in clapping for 2 new amazing APIs in React 19.2.